Hello and welcome to this week's Opening Bell podcast. I'm boxing news editor Tris Dixon, joined as always by Matt Christie. Matt, anything unusual happen this week?
Right, in my personal life, or
Well,
generally something unusual.
I was going to say you know Adrian Broner, but I don't know. Do you know what? I'm looking at a page in Boxing News where I see something black and green with a shiny green head. It's actually on page 16. So that's what made me say it. It says alien lands in Atlantic City. So something unusual kind of happened in boxing. So I don't know about your private life.
Yeah, we'll save that for another time.
We save that for Twitter, yeah.
But Hopkins. But it's no longer a surprise, is it? With what Hopkins is doing at the age of 48, I don't think anybody expected him to lose, really, if they're being honest, to Karo Murat. But it's still hard. Despite that, it's still hard not to be impressed by a 48-year-old man doing what he's doing at the top, at the very, very elite level of sport.
Interestingly, he made it more of a firefight. Inevitably, as was the case when Floyd Mayweather got more involved with Miguel Cotto, people said, oh, he's getting old, it's catching up with him. Hopkins, just like Mayweather said, I just did it to entertain the fans, to keep them entertained. It's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, we didn't. I certainly thought with the Mayweather-Cotto fight, that was a suggestion that Mayweather had seen better days, but he's since proved in subsequent outings that he's as sharp and elusive as ever. I think it's inevitable that at the age of 48, Bernard Hopkins is not going to be the fighter he was. And I think we're just going to have to see what happens next. And I think that's the question, really. A lot of boxing fans are divided, aren't they? Some are saying they'd like to see him against the likes of Kovalev and Stevenson. I heard you in the office saying you wouldn't really like to see those kind of fights for Hopkins at this point in his career. But I think it's intriguing, I do. And I think even perhaps it wouldn't be the finest boxing spectacle for the neutral, but there is something that makes me want to see him fight Mayweather. I don't know what it is. It would probably be the worst fight at that.
Horrendous.
Yeah, at a pay-per-view event, but there's something that makes you want to see that fight.
What about Hopkins against the likes of Froch and Kessler? And I know they've said it would never happen, but Andre Ward, is there anything there?
I don't know. I don't know. I'd like to see Bernard be in one absolutely mega fight, which I think the Mayweather fight kind of ticks the bill a little bit there, and then just retire. Or if he could just retire now, if he had it within him to just walk away from the sport, what else is there for him to prove? I think if he starts losing to the likes of Kovalev, he starts losing to the likes of Stevenson, and let's face it, I would pick Froch over Bernard Hopkins. I think if he starts losing to those guys, then it's not a nice end to his career. Lose to Mayweather, there's no harm done, is there whatsoever?
Yeah, very interesting to see what Hopkins does now. He fought Murat basically because everyone else was tied up. He'll say that Murat was his mandatory, but we know that they can generally be skirted round. Interesting fight on the undercard. We said it would be a good one. Gabe Rosado against Peter Quillin. Swung one way, then the next. We've got a picture of Rosado's gruesome cut on page 18 in this week's issue. Quillin still lacking a fight that really proves he's amongst the big boys, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and I think that he's going to be people now because of the struggle he did have with Rosado, and I think a lot of people in the office we do something online now where we do a weekly analysis, and I think a couple of us picked out the Quillin Rosado fight as the fight to watch out for the weeks. But Quillin didn't dispatch Rosado as impressively as Gennady Golovkin managed, and I think Quillin really still has got it all to prove. I'd put him some way down below the other champions at the weight. Well,
yeah, I've seen Rosado since complaining on Twitter about Quillin's doctor becoming involved in the stoppage rather than Rosado's actual doctor. So controversial there. One fight where there wasn't controversy at the end was Nikolai Firth finally giving way to Deontay Wilder. Predictable, but what now for Deontay Wilder? Say you're Wilder's matchmaker. Who would you put him in with? And there was reports that that Wilder's team have turned down Tony Thompson.
Yeah, I think Thompson again, we have to look at what happened to David Price. I mean, when the David Price Tony Thompson fight was made, there was a lot of head scratching going on. Why is he fighting such a dangerous southpaw for? Wilder needs rounds. That's a fact. I think I still wouldn't be putting him in with someone like Tony Thompson, who you could say is still in the top 10. Certainly the lower reekings of it, but you could say that Thompson is there. I still don't think Wilder's quite ready for that step up yet. He needs someone to take him some rounds. He needs someone to get him 6 or 7 rounds, frustrate him, see what he's like when he's tired, see what happens see what happens to Wilder when someone can punch back. But it is a very, very difficult next step, but I certainly don't think he's ready. I mean, there's talk of him fighting for the vacant WBC heavyweight title if Vitali retires, which to me is insane.
I think a good fight for Wilder would be the winner of Adam at Glasgow next week. That could be an interesting one.
Or the loser.
Yeah. The and also the way the world works sometimes is funny, and I don't just mean in a boxing world, but you know what? It wasn't that long ago where obviously Wilder was slated to meet Derek Chisora, and I think there's still massive value in that fight too. It's a really intriguing fight for me.
Yeah, I'd love to see that fight. I thought it was a great fight when it was announced earlier on this year, when it all looked like all systems go there.
But since then, there's a bit more, isn't there? Wilder's beaten a couple of better opponents since then, and Derek's rejuvenated his career with some decent wins.
Absolutely, I think Chisora has shown that he belongs in the world, probably top 15 at the moment, and he's done more. He's done more so far to show that he deserves that I think Wilder has at the moment. Well, what happens? I mean, Chisora very, very sturdy, but David Haye bowled him over with one shot. You know, you'd be leaning towards Chisora's experience, his savvy against someone like Wilder, who still to me looks ever so crude at times. But what happens? Can any heavyweight stand up to what Wilder's got in those gloves if it lands flush?
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? And I mean, it's kind of getting to the stage where, and I don't want to get criticised for saying this because I don't actually mean it wholeheartedly, but I'll still come out with the analogy. It's kind of like where Mike Tyson was. It's not just who Wilder's beating, but it's how he's beating them, and the fact that basically people are getting bombed out. Yeah,
I mean, what is he now? 30, and 30 stoppages. I mean, to me, as you know, I absolutely, I've got very, very, very soft spot for the heavyweight division.
You like a big man, don't you?
Oh, I like a big man, yeah. But the, that kind of record with this kind of, expectancy, I've been waiting for a prospect to come along for quite some time, and they say they come along, and we've been waiting for one really since Tyson, one that can really grab the sport by the scruff of the neck and dominate the top division. But I'm not convinced. I was probably a bit too young for Tyson. I was aware when Tyson was coming up, but I do think the belief around Tyson was something completely different to Wilder.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you look at Tyson and you think, oh my God, who can stop him?
Exactly.
And with Wilder, you think, wow, what a wide right hand, and he's stepping back, and he's still sort of lifting his head up when he goes in to throw a punch as well, and could get caught. I still think there's a lot to iron out there, and so I think Golden Boy have an interesting job on their hand with Wilder, because you're right. I think the thing that he really needs is rounds, and the hard thing is going to be matching him where he doesn't get exposed.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And Tyson, going back to Mike Tyson, he had James Quick Tillis, who went 10 rounds with him when he was knocking everybody over. Then he had Mitch Green, who had 2 back-to-back pretty tough fights.
Even in the space of about a month as well.
Yeah, it was, and then not long after that, I think with Jesse Ferguson was around that sort of time. He took him some rounds as well.
Those are the tests he need, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And it escapes me as to who would be, the James Quick Tillis of today.
James Slow Tony.
James Slow Tony. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other subject. I would not want to see James Tony.
No. Yeah, you're right. It's tough. I mean, someone like McCline would have gone rounds a few years ago, but time's got on, haven't they? Obviously, I mean, people say McCline's retired, but he has been sparring and looks like he will fight again at some point. But talking about big men, Matt.
Yeah.
Really do like the look of young Anthony Joshua, who, for me, pretty much stole the show on Kell Brook's big night in Sheffield. Now, not saying that I wasn't impressed with Brook, because I was. I thought that was a career best performance against Senchenko. But Anthony Joshua is something really magnetic about him, and I was particularly impressed with how controlled and composed he looked against Paul Butlin.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I know. I've certainly. I've never said that. I thought that Anthony Joshua would go on and win the world title. I've said that perhaps he's moved along a bit too quickly. He had some lucky breaks as an amateur. However, I was mightily impressed on Saturday night with the way that he took out Paul Butlin. Okay, Butlin is he's no world leader, but he's no mug either. He's not somebody that comes in and will fight somebody in their second fight. Certainly he's a journeyman level, but he's not, not many people do that to Paul Butlin.
No, and I spoke to Paul Butlin on Monday, and he was massively impressed with Big Josh. Really, really impressed. And just couldn't say enough nice words about him. Said not just that he was a nice chap and a respectful chap, but that he's just on another level from the other guys he's fought. And in that sentence, he included people like Tyson Fury and sparring, Jonathan Banks and Derek Chisora, which for a guy who's making his second fight, and who's so inexperienced and seems to be learning things so quickly, it bodes well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. I'll be fascinated to see where Joshua goes next. I think, as Eddie Hearn said, we're not going to have trouble finding opponents for him, but we might have more trouble actually paying them. Joshua was very impressive, but I'm still. Let's just let him develop and let's not get too carried away.
Yeah, no, it's just like you say, it's exciting. They don't come along too often, like these potentially very, very good heavyweights. Yeah. But then we talk about Deontay Wilder as well, who still looks raw. 30 fights on, he got a bronze medal in the Olympics.
Yeah, it's true.
So these guys are works in progress, aren't they? Yeah. So we can't judge them too harshly too quickly. But like Wilder, there's still some rough edges for Josh to smooth out. But he's that much younger and seems to be a proper athlete as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and it's the short space of time that from his debut to this fight, and I could see improvements in what he was doing in that short space of time. And to me, that is very, very impressive. He strikes me as the kind of person that after his fight on Saturday, he probably would have woken up on Sunday and he'd have gone straight to the gym and he'd have been trying to improve even further.
I think with regards to Kell Brook, I think it's fair to say Sinchenko's the best he fought. Before the fight, I asked him that question, whether he thought Sinchenko was the best he'd faced, and he was sort of scratching around with Lovemore and Doe as possibly the best guy he's fought previously. And I think Sinchenko, it's fair to say, is a better fighter than Doe, just not as durable. So I thought Brook put on a real clinic in Sheffield. Obviously, he got a touch shaken and wobbled, as is part and parcel of the business. He sort of rode the storm out and came back and finished the fight in emphatic style. And I think what's interesting about the fight is on social media, there's a massive divide on Kell Brook, and it seems to be the divide seems to be between Brook fans and Amir Khan fans, because while I, as a independent, impartial viewer, thought Brook was very good, others were saying, he's just beaten another bum. He's fighting nobody. Khan would bash him to pieces because he hasn't stepped up in level yet. And all the rest of it. And then there was the others on the flip side of the Khan debate were saying, well, look at his power, he just wiped out Sinchenko. No one had done that to Sinchenko before in that manner. And imagine if he hit Khan with that. Which side would you come down on, Brook or Khan? Who wins?
My instincts are saying Brook at the moment, on the evidence at the moment, on their most recent performances, which is all you can really go upon. But I mean, we talk about Sinchenko. I did say last week that I wasn't convinced that Sinchenko would be that much, and it's easy to say after the event, isn't it? It's very, very easy to be wise after the event because many times I've completely been wrong. But on this instance, I was correct, and I did think that Sinchenko. I thought Brook would win fairly easily. I thought Carson Jones was a tougher opponent, perhaps not as accomplished, but a tougher opponent for Brook. But the way that Brook went about it, even the fact that he got wobbled, I think he was in the fourth round, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I think even then, he should get no criticism for that. He was hitting an awkward place, and he was wobbled. But almost as soon as he was wobbled, he was focused and he was back, and that's the important thing to gauge from that. And you can kind of say, well, what if Brook hits Khan with those punches? Or what if Khan was to hit Brook with that? it's all ifs and maybes and what have you. But at the moment, on current form, Brook, I believe, is the stronger welterweight.
Could you see that fight happening in 2014? Brook Khan?
It really depends what happens with Mayweather. If that fight is all signed and sealed, then it becomes more unlikely. If not, I certainly think it's a massive fight for both of them, and I think it would probably the biggest fight we can make in Britain at the moment in the lower weight divisions.
I think Brook could be one of the unlikely beneficiaries of this Golden Boy top rank Cold War, in the sense that being with Matchroom, his options are feasibly open to both stables of fighters.
Yes, true.
And there's plenty to pick from amongst both ranks. Obviously, there's still speculation that he could fight the winner of Devon Alexander, Sean Porter. We'll have to see how that one works out, because I'm not sure Alexander would be keen to wait around for Brook any longer than he already has. And obviously, what happened in terms of Kell being injured. But I know Alexander was quite fed up by the end of all that. So some interesting options out there. The Khan-Brook thing, though, is quite a big deal on social media, isn't it? And in fact, Kell Brook's fans apparently bombarded Devon Alexander to the point where he snapped on Twitter as well, telling them to leave him alone, or something along those lines. Also on that card, Bryan Rose fought Javier Francisco Maciel, a very, very close one according to Bobby Hunter, who gets the stats for us on and gets the fight scores for us on the Boxing News website.
Yeah, it was. I think we had 10 for Rose, 13 for Maciel, and the remaining 8 all scored it a draw. It was that kind of fight. If it had have been called a draw, I don't think anybody could have had any complaints. Pleased that Bryan Rose won it. He really did step. He was better than I thought he would be. But it was such a tight fight, and you wonder if Rose, now he's made this step, if he can make the next step up to world level. For me, that's a question that's still going to have to be answered in the future. We certainly can't look at an answer for that now.
Definitely. Just back to Brook briefly.
Yeah.
If you were his promoter, who would be the dream fight for Brook next? And I don't mean rush him into a massive pay-per-view attraction. I mean, what sensible fight would you take for him next? Because there are those people I mentioned who are saying he still hasn't fought anybody. So who's the somebody he should fight to get amongst the big names?
I don't know. I've heard name. I mean, perhaps the winner of. If Alexander and Porter, whoever wins that one, I mean, doesn't want to step forward and fight Brook, and that's looking unlikely. Why not the winner of Malignaggi and Judah? Yeah, that's a decent. I think that would be quite. If they look good,
if he's not going to beat the winner of that, then he may as well stop counting his chickens.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you can make a case. Both of those are legitimate top 10 guys. I think Senchenko's top 10 placing perhaps came from the way from beating Ricky Hatton. So yeah, I think that'd be the logical next step for him.
Or the loser, as you call them, the loser of Maidana Broner.
Yeah, that's a good shout. It depends. It depends what happens.
Eddie Hearn was talking after the fight about maybe Broner fighting in Bramall Lane against Kell Brook.
Why not? His lead's ready for Adrian Broner. He's anywhere ready for Adrian Broner.
Sheffield United, isn't it?
I think you said Ellen Road.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bramall Lane.
Bramall Lane.
Bramall Lane.
Yeah.
No, I don't think Ellen Road. But yeah, Bramall Lane. I'm not sure that they are either. But interesting. I mean, there's plenty of interesting options. Like I said, he could be the unwitting beneficiary of that cold war.
Yeah.
One guy moving in seemingly in opposite direction is super middleweight Arthur Abraham, who laboured to an uninspiring victory over Giovanni De Caroli. Abraham, the game's almost up, isn't it? Don't you think?
I think it is. I mean, he's only 33. He hasn't, although he's taken some beatings recently, he hasn't really had a catalogue of tough fights. I just think it's that. I think it's that destroyer's mentality that when they realise that not everybody is going to be destroyed, a huge part of that confidence slips away from their psyche, and you just can't get it back. You see it so many times, and that's what I think the case is with Abraham.
I just think that the guy had a lot of tough times at middleweight, had a lot of tough time making the weight at middleweight, maybe stayed down there slightly too long, and then when he came to super middleweight, was straight in the Super 6 and maybe pitched in too deep too quickly. That said, made an awful lot of money in his career, had a very, very good very, very solid. It's better than solid career. He's had a very, very good career. Made a fortune and has nothing more to prove, does he?
No, but I think he'll keep going. I think the would it be a fourth match with Stieg? Third fight with Stieg.
Yeah.
Of course, the rematch was the
Rocky
Rocky Balboa, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I think a third fight with Stieglitz will make big money in Germany. So I think we'll see that. But yeah, I think if you used to say to Arthur Abraham, or the guy that Arthur Abraham's team when he turned professional, that he would go on to achieve this, he'd get 10 successful defences of the world middleweight title, or rather a version of it. Then he would go up to super middleweight, have a decent career there, win another world belt. I think they'd say that's a pretty healthy career. One
of my most memorable fights ringside actually was Abraham and Wayne Alcock in Switzerland.
Right.
And it was Abraham really at his pomp in the middle of that string of defences that you just mentioned. And Alcock went over there in good shape and was confident, and saw them both at the weigh-in. There was a bit of an aura around Abraham that came with that mystique that you were talking about. And Alcock was stopped on his feet right in front of me, and the punches that came in that were raining in at the time were some of the loudest thuds I've heard in boxing. They were absolutely eerie. And that was Abraham then, and the Abraham at super middleweight I don't think's been the same since. But talking about eerie punching power, if we move into the previews this week, to page 26 and 27, Gennady Golovkin fighting Curtis Showtime Stevens. The interesting thing here for me is that people are giving Stevens some kind of puncher's chance when that's all he is, and that's not a massive criticism, but to beat someone like Gennady Golovkin, you need more than just a punch, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Golovkin, he's I think some people have been aware of him recently, only this year, with what he did to Matthew Macklin, but this guy has been at the top of his game since he was an amateur. He was an outstanding amateur. He's worked his way through the pros. He has not had... there's been nobody in the professional ranks that looks like they're going to beat him. If Curtis Stevens was to be that man, it would be an absolute stunner.
I'm just seeing here, I'm quite surprised. He's only a 7-1 underdog, Stevens. I'd probably be pushing him at about 15.
Yeah, you'd have... I mean, I guess it comes back to what you say, though. It's a two-horse race, and one of these horses has got a hell of a whack.
They said that about Buster Douglas, and they reckon you could get 42-1 on that.
Yeah, I know. I don't think there's... it's easy to say, isn't it? But, and we always compare what we believe to be potential upsets to Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson, but the reason we do that and the reason we don't compare it to any others is because there hasn't been another upset like Buster Douglas, Mike Tyson in the history of boxing. They just don't happen that often.
All right. But Golovkin, like you said, I mean, we've been aware of him for a while. I think we did our first feature on him in 2009. We should try and dig that out, actually, and put it online. Golovkin's an awesome force. Spoken to Matthew Macklin about him several times since their fight, and he's obviously clearly sold on Golovkin as the best middleweight out there, and he's obviously fought Martinez too. It's just hard to see who can stop Golovkin. The question is, should Mayweather step up and wait and have a shot at stopping him? It's the
fight I'd be... If I could make one fight in boxing, that's the one that I'd make. I'd be fascinated, absolutely fascinated to see that. The thing is, what I tell you is people are now, there's a lot of Floyd haters out there, and they're like, why does he not step up to middleweight? They forget where this guy started.
They forget where he is now. He didn't even make light middle last time.
Yeah, exactly. So he's come up a long way. It's a huge step. However, you would think with Floyd's self-belief, with what he's achieved, and the real niggle about his record at the moment is that he hasn't really fought anybody, or he hasn't beaten anybody where it's been that much of a challenge for him. This would be a huge challenge, and what a statement that would make if he was to go up to middleweight, win a title at another weight, and beat Gennady Golovkin, perhaps the most feared guy in boxing today.
Golovkin, 89% knockout ratio at the moment.
It's not bad, is it?
It's more than any of your exams. And interesting thing about Stevens, you can get with Betfair as much as 9-1. That's as far as you'll go. 9-1 is an outsider.
Yes, not worth it.
But Golovkin, I mean, I think he's a shoo-in to beat Stevens. We've talked about some heavyweights already. Some heavyweight action in Hull. it's not a line that we often use. But this weekend, Lucas Brown against Richard Towers, 2 Hatton Promotions fighters. Interesting stat from this bill, actually. There's only one match from fighter on this match from show. So, I mean, people do talk about monopolies. People talk about Eddie Hearn not working with other promoters. And Luke Campbell's the only match from fighter on the bill, which I think is interesting. Top of the bill is an interesting, sort of curious clash, isn't it? Brown and Towers.
Yeah. I mean, I can't wait for this fight. I really can't.
It sums up everything that you like about the heavyweight division, doesn't it?
It's just going to be a lot of fun, isn't it? I mean, he's got potential. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, the purists among you wouldn't suggest that you sit there and try and get any lessons out of this one. But I do think that this is going to be rock'em sock'em stuff. Towers in his last fight against is it Gregory Toney?
Yeah,
and he was absolutely all over the place for a round, and really that should have been stopped. Or you can say that because he came back and won, so maybe you can make the argument that no, it shouldn't have been stopped. The referee did the right thing. But he's shown that he can be hurt. He's also shown that he can come back. He's shown numerous times that he can punch. With Lucas Brown, again, he's a fun little operator. We've seen him on these shores since he's been signed with Hattons for a few years now. And
had that win over Travis Walker, didn't he? Climbed off the deck.
Yeah,
he's gone and got a couple. Didn't he beat James Toney in Australia?
Yeah,
as well, didn't he? He's got a couple of scalps.
Very, very old James Toney, one-sided decision. And he's got a whack that you could imagine could take Richard Towers with. A lot of people are speaking highly of Richard Towers that have sparred him, including Brown, spoke highly about him in the past. David Hay has recently sung Richard Towers' praises. So, you know, he's
sparring Vladimir Klitschko as well. So although it's a long time since that Gregory Toney fight,
yeah,
he might have come on a bit behind closed doors as well, Klitschko and Hay.
Well, that's exactly what he said. I mean, I was speaking to him at David Hay, the Open training day. Just before Hay cut his eye prior to the postponement of the Tyson Fury fight, and that's exactly what he was saying. He was saying, you know, okay, I haven't been in the ring, but I have had some absolute top class experience that he couldn't buy.
Interesting. I think the fight I'm most looking forward to this weekend is without doubt Tommy Coyle against John Simpson.
Yeah.
For me, it's a better fight than the original Tommy Coyle against Gavin Rees, because I think Gavin Rees might have been a level or two above Tommy Coyle, but I think Tommy Coyle, and this is no disrespect to either of them, but I think John Simpson is one of the best value British fighters around at the moment. Tommy Coyle was in that Fight of the Year contender with Derry Matthews a month or two ago, before he had his heart broken in the last round, but before that devastating stoppage came.
Yeah.
And I think their styles should blend for a cracker.
It should be a good one. It really should be a good one. Like you say, John Simpson has done, you know, his fight against Choi earlier on this year. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was just absolute mayhem from start to finish. And you do wonder if this is going to be the same. Tommy Coyle, though, the crucial thing for Tommy, as you mentioned, that loss to Derry Matthews. He was in control against a man who was widely expected to beat him for so long, and his concentration was gone for just a second, and that's all it takes. Now we see what he's made of. Now we see how he copes that. And John Simpson, believe you me, is not. This is no guy just to come back in and take it easy with. There's every chance that John Simpson will win this fight.
Simpson. I find that he's brilliant to watch. I think he's an animal. But you know what? The last time I looked forward to a John Simpson fight as much as this one that I'm looking forward to was when he fought Lee Selby, and it ended up a bit disappointing, didn't it? It was 4-round stoppage and a little bit one-sided. But I think this is a good match on paper. Him and Tommy Coyle.
I do. I'll be interested to see. I think if Coyle wins this, he goes back into the elite with it in the division. But John Simpson, for me, you just can never write John Simpson off. It's not that long ago that we were talking about a world title shot for John Simpson. Didn't go to plan against Lee Selby. But yeah, Simpson, I think he's at that point in his career now where you just cannot. He's going to be aware that he cannot lose another fight.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Anything else catching your eye this week in the headlines? Anything on the website that you're particularly proud of? I
mean, as we speak, it's the anniversary of the Muhammad Ali George Foreman Rumble in the Jungle fight, and there's the original boxing news report up online, which has generated a bit of interest on Facebook. So get online and have a look at that. which is really is fascinating. There's also a bit about there's also some of the preview in there as well, where we say that Muhammad Ali can't go on forever and he can't cheat Father Time, which is immediately followed by
the report.
The report, yeah, indicating otherwise.
There's an interesting new analysis on the site as well, isn't there?
Yeah, it's heroes and villains. We do it every week. It's all members of the team will give an answer on various things. The two questions which will remain every week is the hero of the week and villain of the week. And then there's a few other things looking ahead to the weekend, so we'll get that up. That'll be up, I would hope, tomorrow or Thursday. So yeah, that's going to be something that we're going to be doing. What else is up on the website at the moment? Mickey Van, actually, believe it or not, and I know that a lot of people out there love and hate Mickey Van, but there's a very complimentary blog on there this week, and he actually talks about Anthony Joshua in that he thinks Anthony Joshua is the best prospect he's seen in British boxing, and he has a few interesting things to say about Joshua, and also complimentary things to say about Kell Brook.
That is interesting. What's the next show you're actually going to? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Hoping to get along to Prize Fighter to see the remnants of James Toney on November the 14th. I'll be fascinated to see that, probably a little bit morbidly so, but yeah, I'll be fascinated to see what's left of James Toney. Which I think we already know there's not a great deal, is there? It's not a great deal, but I think it really depends who else is in that field.
Yeah, okay. Just talking about underdogs like we did earlier, we talked about Curtis Stevens, Golovkin. Big underdog coming up in a couple of weeks' time, featuring a fighter we've got a really nice, heartwarming feature with in this week's issue. It's Nonito Donaire, who Don McRae's gone up close and personal with in Las Vegas. And I think he's, I know Nonito fairly well now, I think I can say. And Don's really captured the essence of what Nonito Donaire is all about in a big, revealing 6-pager. Some really interesting insight in there about the Rigondeaux fight, about being a dad, about fighting Darchinian again. Some really, really interesting stuff. But I think what I get most of all from Don's piece is what Donaire is like as a person. I don't think he necessarily comes across the way that he actually is on TV. Not to say he comes across badly, because he doesn't, but I think Don's just really captured him quite brilliantly. And he starts a massive 1-10 on favourite against old victim Victor Harchinian, who's priced at 6-1. Also, just looking at underdog prices, I know George Groves and Carl Froch will be coming face to face in the Sky Sports Studio this week. Groves 4-1 outsider. Still agree with that? 4-1 outsider.
He's a live 4-1. He really is a live 4-1. It's one of those fights that I've said before. Groves could surprise everybody. He could be, he could beat Froch and make a statement like so many unbeaten young fighters have done throughout history. But you've got to favour Carl Froch, and I think the 4-1 odds against George Groves are fair.
I'll tell you what, two prices just before we go coming up. Brandon Rios on the same night as George Groves fights Froch. Brandon Rios is in China fighting Manny Pacquiao. Rios a 9-2 outsider. You could go for a Rios and Groves double and make some good money, but you'd be gambling. But obviously you'd be gambling. But what's just caught my eye is check out those odds there for Felix Sturm and Darren Barker. The bookies can hardly separate them. Sturm 6-5 on, 6-5 underdog. Barker 18-19 on, which shows how much, and I'm going to use that word again, how much of a gamble Barker's taken going out to Germany, I think.
Yeah, Barker still is the favourite, and it's not very often that a British fighter goes over to Germany and is the favourite. So I think that says quite a lot, really, about that fight. But absolutely, full credit again. We've already said it on the show, but full credit to Darren Barker for going out there and making his maiden defence in Felix Sturm's backyard.
I know I said 2, but let me just see. It's Tony Bellew, by the way, 7-2 underdog against Adonis Stevenson, who's 3-2, 3-10 on. And interestingly, Guillermo Rigondeaux 1-10 on to beat Agbeko on December the 8th, who's now 23-4 outsider. So long odds for Agbeko.
Agbeko for me is as big an outsider as Curtis Stevens is this weekend.
Yeah, I'd probably go with that. I mean, a star who should be made for Rigondeaux. So, okay, Matt. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time this week.
No
We're
worries.
grateful as always. And we'll be back next week, looking ahead to most likely your trip to Prize Fighter.
Let's hope so.
And we'll be reflecting on the big heavyweight clash in Hull and the Golovkin clash in New York. So there'll be plenty coming up next week. Thanks a lot for joining us again this week.